All right. Guys, welcome to part two of episode six. We were just talking about the personal cost that the gendered burdens of patriarchy and gender roles have imposed on us, and what it's taken from us from a mental health and well-being perspective. I think in terms of how you know how that prescribed manner of showing up in the world has impacted me. Like Tommy said, I was also a really sensitive kid, right? My mother used to call me her chuppies, just like a really sensitive. Only person who could hold me was my mother. Just like oh yeah, I've been described as having been a needy kid and a bothersome and tiring kid, and yeah, man, like from a having like an array of additional emotional needs as well as like educational needs and that sort of thing. Um, and I think I became very, very aware very early on of just how much I'm not like other boys my age, right? So obviously I didn't have the language back then, or even the understanding of what masculinity was. I also defined I defined what being a boy meant in very obscure terms, right? And what being a man means, just because my reference point to men particularly was through my older cousins and my uncles and that sort of thing. And I come from a reasonably progressive family, where um yeah, where men love hard, and they show that love, so I've always associated that with what being a man meant, right? But I also never saw male figures in my family, older male figures in my family, ever exhibit like an emotion that was vulnerable or fragile, right? Because even expressing joy and love, there's a security in love, right? And there's a
Yeah,
security in joy, you know.
yeah,
Um, and I think that might be partly, in part, the reason why I've never really had an issue expressing love, even at the height of my toxicity, just because I've always conceived of the freedom to express joy as something I inherently have, right? A freedom I inherently have. But yeah, I think in conceiving of of boyhood and manhood in those terms, right? With strength and just like a security of self, you know what I mean? And also being the kind of kid who didn't have that. My understanding of masculinity, not even my understanding of masculinity, but my understanding that I am not the masculine archetype, was a very, very early realization for me. You know what I mean? And ever since then, it sort of has it's led to a a life of overcompensating at every turn. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm.
It's led to, oh, I don't know if you guys remember me in first year, and I always cite my physical appearance and my weight, at both the height of my toxicity, um, and also the point where I was least secure in my masculinity and in my man slash boyhood. Right, I came into Wits, a very small, very short, very thin man, right, or thin young man or thin boy, whatever an 18, 19-year-old is. I'm not quite sure
A
scientifically.
boy man.
Um, a boy man,
a manlet.
um, a man, a manling, a manling. Um, so yeah, I came into Wits, this really, really tiny manling, right? Who yeah, who didn't meet the threshold from a physical prowess and presence perspective, because my uncles and my male cousins were, I mean, you've seen them, they're all short, right? I think that the tallest man in my family is like
Don't
two
put it
foot
like that.
three. but like so like it's but that's the thing, is that like even how we sort of like generally think of masculinity as coming with size and strength, right? um even in instances where, even in characteristics that they didn't have, they still managed to fill rooms with their presence, right, and with their
Yeah.
charisma. And I didn't have that, so it was
Or
really
careers
or
sometimes.
careers, right? Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, and just their excellence, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Because we also do this thing where we're very, very quick to celebrate the excellence of the men in our family and then not the women, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
of
it's
course.
not at
Yeah.
all to say that there aren't excellent women in my family. There are too many. I'm joking. There are a lot of excellent women in my family. Um, so yeah, man. It's I get to Vits, and I am this really like insecure kid who now is in a space where, you know, the buffers I built for myself in high school, similar to the ones that Tommy explained, where, you know, I had the yeah, almost the protection of my problematic high school friends, right? In my
Yeah.
participation in the in you know, the problematicness that comes with being like a boy in high school. But it comes with protection as well, you know. um so now I get to lit on my own, and I don't have that, and that's where the overcompensating begins, right? So the first thing I do, I think I meet one of the first people I met at Wits, this big guy, right? The mutual friend
Mm.
of well, he was a mutual friend of all of ours. Big guy, and I think the first thing he points out is just how if you gained a little bit of weight, my boy, you could tear this place up. You know what I mean? Like you could if you put on some muscle, you could do the most here. You know, you could
There it
collect
starts.
women. There
Yes.
it starts, right?
Yeah,
You
that's the
could collect,
conspiracy.
exactly. You could,
Yeah.
oh man. So the first thing I do is get into the gym. You know what I mean? Get into the
Yeah.
gym, and oh my boy. And you know, like it's I find myself in this, not just gym culture, but like this really harmful gym culture where um bravs take like anabolic steroids with every meal, right? And
Yeah.
drink I don't know, the weird mass gaining shake with every, just like really, really unhealthy, you know,
Yeah.
like fitness culture. So now I'm
Yeah.
stuck in this thing, and I'm the smallest, weakest kid in this really, really toxic fitness culture, like bro culture. Um, and yeah, so eventually the size comes, and then it's women, because like Tammy said, it is sex first, right, in high school, and then it's women. For me, those two phases came at the same time. Wasn't so much a thing in high school, but they collided in university. And then I was
Mm.
like, listen, I'm behind and I have to collect. And I think
Mm.
that was
Yeah.
the beginning of me conceiving of women as just check marks, bro, like tallies.
Yeah.
You know what I
Black
mean?
book.
Just black book, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Just marks on the prison wall, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So just, and oh, dude, after a litany after a wild quantity of really, really unhealthy interactions with women, really dishonest interactions with women,
Mm.
um, I meet my current partner, right? Sorry, I get together with my current partner, um, and I mean, Dumi and I have a lot of history, which always made us being in a relationship feel like um, something written in the stars, right? Like a
Yeah.
cosmically promised thing. Um, and now it's here, right? Now she's here, and for the first time in my life, for the first time after that long like string of, you know, 2 month relationships, that ended because I was dishonest and because I was emotionally abusive. I'm with this person who I'm like, okay, you need to get your shit together, bro. But only to the extent that I don't lose her, right? Not to the extent that it's good for her.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, the next phase in that trajectory of masculinity from sex to from sex to money in our at our current age. I'm dating this excellent genius human being who's a doctor, right? And now I'm in a position where I find myself making like 55% of what she makes. You know what I mean? And it took, I think she spent the first 2 years of our relationship preparing me for that. You know what I mean? Just because I think she could obviously she could see the fragility, and she was just like preempting the damage that I would inflict on our relationship as a consequence of my insecurities, you know.
But she also knows men as well.
But she also knows men, sure. She also knows men and the things we do when we don't feel secure, right? Because we only become violent when, not only, but we become the most violent when we're not secure, when we have to enforce, right? So also she knows men. And so we established terms in our own relationship about what how planning towards collective goals or shared goals is going to look like, and how managing expenses in the context of our relationship is going to look like. But the problem is sometimes it doesn't matter the arrangements you have with your partner, because there are always multiple parties to a relationship. It's never just the people in them, right? And now the perspectives of my family and family friends and friends become a thing where
then it stacks.
then it's right, where I had a situation where a family friend of ours came to the house and Dumi's car was parked outside, right? And he says to me, like, bro, is that your girlfriend's car? And I'm like, yeah, whatever, fine. And then he's like, yo, my boy, you're fucked. And I was like, and I'm like, what the fuck? What's wrong with you? And then he was like, she's a doctor too, right? And I'm like, yeah, she's gonna be one next year. And he was like, my boy, so her family is able to provide her that, and then she's also going to be a doctor. My boy, you're in shit. You better find a way to get your shit together, because my boy, like your relationships are all about exhibiting strength. And if you're not going to be able to do that, she's going to find someone who will, you know?
Yes.
Right?
We are there now. This is the
we're
era.
there now, you know, we're there now where it's just a constant, it's just a series of ongoing examples of the paradox between this supposed strength and also how fragile masculinity is, you know. But I want to ask you, just so we wrap up quickly, the whole reconfiguring your masculinity and redefining it, right? We spoke earlier about how masculinity is a performance. You know, you need to perform constantly in order to fit a masculine mold. Tell me about alternatives that you experimented with, alternatives to like traditional masculinity, or the alternatives to the shitty man or shitty boy you used to be before you settled into the person you are now, which by no means, I mean, we're not good, let alone like perfect people. So like, tell me about the alternatives you experience. Tell me about what recalibrating and redefining your masculinity looks like, and how has that impacted how people view you. What happens when somebody tries to make that downward imposition of that downward imposition on you now when you opt those things, and how do you conflict? Frank, I think go first because you're pressed for time.
Yeah, sure, but I'll stick around till everyone's responses. I think the first and most important thing for me, and this is advice that I'd like to give to as many guys who are watching as possible. man, it's going to be a bit of a difficult one, but change friends. You know, I think the first step, it's an uncomfortable one. It's a difficult one to listen to.
But those niggas need to go.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and give you a criteria of the type of masculinity that you shouldn't be buying into and the type of men you shouldn't be. You know who they are. You know that when you approach them, you have to start performing. They make you feel tired. They make you feel unnatural, and they make you feel like you're buying into a brand of masculinity that you don't want to buy into, which is hectically patriarchal, misogynistic. So the first thing is a change of friends. There's simply no substitute for changing friends. The second one, however, especially in like really large groups of men with really, hyper masculine toxic men, it's very difficult. The second one, though, is that you can also start doing the work of reforming your friends, especially your closer 2 or 3 friends. You really can. So in some instances, you don't have to end your friendships entirely. Just start doing the work. But I would say step 2, start with doing an audit of your friend circles, and then, using discernment to clearly mark the line of who needs to stay, who needs to go. Once you've done that, I think you've built a nice ecosystem of accountability for yourself with other men who are striving to be better. And because you're surrounded by other men who are striving to be better, the standard keeps getting higher and higher and higher. So to use an example of us, I started getting particularly close to you two towards late 2015, 2016. That's when I started letting go of my old friend circles and really started pouring myself into these 2 friendships. And what I realized in our friendships, there was a time when, I can't remember where it was, but I remember making a slightly sexist joke not slightly sexist, making a sexist joke around about 2016, 2017. And one of you guys were like, Frank, we don't laugh at that anymore. And I was like, oh, come on. Okay. And then I stopped. And that's when I realized, like, everyone in their individual capacity, especially the 3 of us and a few other men who had also been recalibrating, had been building this new standard of what it means to be a man. And that new standard then became an accountability mechanism for all of us. And so for me, I'd be lying if I said I did this work on my own. It really did require an army of other men who were willing to go on the journey with. But the first step was just learning which friends needed to stay and which friends needed to join me in my next life. And whatever, I'm not sure what the opposite of the race to the bottom is, but the opposite of that ended up happening with you guys, where it was like a race to the top. It became, a thing of like, it wasn't like a competition of who can be the wokest, but it was certainly an issue of, here's the standard. And in a few weeks' time, we're increasing the standard. And a few weeks after that, we're increasing the standard. It starts off with overt sexism, and then other more covert forms of sexism, misogyny, and patriarchy, including things like homophobia, including things like xenophobia, so it just became this race to the top amongst all of us, and we're all holding each other accountable, and we all started off by cutting certain men from our lives. So yeah, man, that's the first step that I would encourage a lot of men to take: discern and then cut.
I couldn't agree more. Because look, at the end of the day, Dooms, you need to be able to be who you are.
Yo, my boy, I was like, right.
That's all. That's all you want. You need to be able to be who you are so that you can optimize your chances of fulfilling your purpose in this world.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to, I guess, like Bong said, create an environment that is fertile for you to grow into the kind of person you want to become. And yeah, like I couldn't agree with Bongani more. And I think for me, it was letting go of friends, dude. It was just letting go of friends. And again, I'm not gonna be out here act judgmental on some, those guys were the bad guys and I was the victim. And I'm just free now. And while they carry on their dark life, nah, dog, like we were all in it.
Yeah.
we were all in it. We were hardcore in it. Like whatever it meant, whatever it took, whatever woman's life was at the stake, we were there, right?
Yeah.
We were there. But like at some point, at the point at which you like, nah, this is bullshit. The point where your conviction, you decide that your conviction will now become your way of life at that point, because we all know it's wrong. That's the other damn boring thing, right? We know it's wrong. So at the point where your conviction supersedes the status quo, then do what Boani say, right? Discern, let go, move on, right? And that happened for me around 2015, 2016, because you guys, I had always been friends with you, but I was never as close to you until around 2016, And for me, that was like, yeah, these are the niggas that are on this journey, and I need to be with these guys because, the world is messed up, man. Yeah. And we are actively contributing to the denigration of this world. And I need to be with people that are, here to posit, like to who are progressive in their views and in their actions and in their thoughts and in their own ambitions, who are ambitious enough to even let go of their privilege, because that's a sign of strong ambition. You're ambitious enough to let go of your privilege to the extent that you want to see women equal to you. It's not lip service. And I'm like, I want to be with those guys. And that's really where it changed, because once that happens, because your friends is where you have your most conversations. So the conversations that we have between the three of us, and even in our individual capacities on one-on-ones, are so deep because they have been a constant reflection on unlearning. They've really been like genuinely, and that's why this podcast is so natural. Yeah, because we've been having these conversations like, yo, man, what happens when you are in this situation? Yo, man, what happens? Hey, man, I'm a bit challenged by this one here. Blah blah blah. Like everything that we are saying here on the podcast, we've probably said to each other in our private conversations, because in our private conversations we are reflecting genuinely on how to become better people. Yeah, and that includes being better men. And so I think, like I was saying yesterday, like at the end of the day, manhood and being a man is being a partner. That's what we are striving towards. Yeah. We need to be partners to women. We need to be partners to everyone on the spectrum. We need to be partners, and partners that necessitates equality. And in a world of inequality, those with privilege need to relinquish their privilege. Very plain and simple. Right? It's not whack talk. It's real. It's not whack Twitter talk. It's real stuff. It's plain life principles.
Right? Like men, we expect the same thing as from white people,
Precisely. And it's so weird that we always have to draw that parallel for men to understand, and yet they don't. No states, they don't. Even if you draw that parallel, you know what I'm saying. But we out here, we doing the work. But man, like, and again, you get to a place where you even, I can't believe it. Like, I don't even listen to as much rap music as I used to. Every once in a while, I'm bumping Laugh Now, Cry Later. But like, your container changes. Your most essential part of your character molds itself into something better. Yeah, and that's possible. And that's where we need to be as men. It needs to be a watershed moment, but it's unfortunate that many men will die being who they are. But like, I think it's look, as millennials, as people who are defining the way of living for the next 40, 50 years, it's really up to us to change it and like define a new culture.
Yeah. For me, like, I think, I mean, I don't want to create the impression that it's, I don't want to say as easy as cutting friends off, because sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's difficult. But a lot of the times you find yourself in situations where a lot of the men who hold you to, who impose like violent masculine standards on you are people you can't get rid of in your life, right? I think we all have instances of how, like, I think we all have examples and experiences of instances where our family has been like, whoa, that's how you relate to your partner? That's not what men do, though. You know what I mean? Like,
that's my whole life, dude.
You know what I mean? Like, we're all, like, to some degree, it's going to be a thing. There are going to be people in your life that you can't get rid of. There are going to be people in your life that are constants and that don't want to grow with you, you know. But I think even in that case, you still have to, you have to make the decision to become a better person for yourself. Like, even if you're not going to do it for the sake of the women in your life and the women that you interact with daily, at least do it for yourself for the purpose of becoming a better person, you know? But I also think, Tammy, like you said, you need to just be who you are, dude. Like, and the who you are, I mean, is the person who you are when you're on your own, and the person who isn't, the person who isn't afraid who isn't afraid of the consequences of not performing, right? Because you're on your own. I think you need to feel the same way out in the world as you do when you're in the safety of your home, on your, like, or in a space on your own, you know? Just because, like you said, you need to be who you are. And I know that absolutely none of us by nature, no one likes that shit. It sucks. Just stop doing it, you know? Just stop. So yeah, man, just be who you are. It's going to impact a lot of relationships positively. It's going to impact a lot of relationships negatively. And unfortunately, some of the relationships it's going to impact negatively are people you can't get rid of, right? Because you can't sell your father. You can't your dad out of your life, and the same goes for your uncles and maybe even your mother and your partner, right? But just to the extent that you can, take them with them on the journey that you're undertaking. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for a really, really insightful 5 episodes, 10 parts, I think 11 parts, because the one episode was 3 parts. I announced at the beginning of the show that this is the last episode for the pilot season, and that we'll be going to the drawing board to find out, you know, where to take learning and unlearning based on the things we've learned and unlearned in the process of you know, of creating these, of having these discussions in this public forum. But yeah, gents, thank you so much. I love you both, and we'll probably chat outside of the people now.
Like 2 weeks time, we'll be sending memes.
Yeah, exactly. I'll find you on the group.
Alrighty. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Sure.
Till next season.
All right.